In 2019, we saw NHL history, as a smaller framed but dynamic Jack Hughes was drafted first overall by the New Jersey Devils. And Jack Hughes was the first player in NHL history to go directly from the USDP straight to playing in the NHL. And this is because every player in the past has played at least one season in the NCAA or shifted to another league to develop. So when Jack was drafted as that smaller frame player, many analysts said that Jack would greatly benefit from dominating one season in the NCAA. However, Jack would of course make the lineup, and well, Jack is statistically having the worst rookie season by a first overall pick in the last 2 decades. On this graph, we have rookie season point per game averages of previous first round picks. So of course, Connor McDavid sits at the top with over a point per game. Here's Ekblad and Dahlin, who are both defensemen. Nathan MacKinnon, Austin Matthews, the Yak Attack, Nail Yakupov, who's considered to be one of the biggest busts in NHL history. And here is Jack Hughes. Yep. Now personally, I'm a huge fan of Jack Hughes, and I still think he'll develop into a franchise player for the Devils. But this had more to do with the fact that Jack Hughes was not in the best environment for him to succeed. However, many people are very quick on the draw to write off Jack Hughes as a massive bust. So today's video, we're going to go over 5 players that looked like massive busts, but ended up developing into stars at the NHL level. So has your team ever had a player like this who maybe was a high draft pick, took a couple years, but once he got there, he turned into a star player? Comment down below and press subscribe for some more awesome hockey content. Let's get straight into this video. We'll start with probably the most absurd rookie season by a top draft pick in the modern NHL era. In the 2010 NHL draft, we saw the highest drafted Swiss player in NHL history, as the New York Islanders jumped on Nino Niederreiter with the 5th overall pick. And just like Nico Hischier in 2017, Niederreiter was a massive riser in the 2010 NHL draft, as he dominated the World Juniors with 10 points in 7 games, which caused him to go from a mid-first rounder to a top 5 pick. Because in the regular season, Nino had a respectable but not overwhelming 36 goals and 60 points in 65 games for the Portland Winterhawks. But regardless, Nino was that highly skilled, complete scoring winger who's going to be the perfect complementary piece to a newly drafted John Tavares. In the next season, he wouldn't make the Islanders lineup, but Nino would continue to develop very well in the WHL, with 41 goals, 70 points in 55 games. So finally, in 2011, Nino Niederreiter would enter his first full season in the NHL. And I kid you not, this is no joke, Nino would put up 1 goal, 0 assists, so 1 point, in 55 NHL games. Absolutely absurd. So clearly, Nino Niederreiter was not being coached correctly, or at the very least, should have had 1 more season in the minors. As Niederreiter was a highly skilled player who thrived on the power play and needed line mates that actually had some skill. However, Nino played on the 4th line and had little to no chance of succeeding. And this stat line made everyone extremely confused, because that little production is very concerning. And because of this, Nino would be traded to the Minnesota Wild, where he quickly developed into a scoring top 6 winger. So what seemed to be a massive bust story of someone who put up 1 point in 55 games turned into a very good top 6 talent. Next, we have another Edmonton Oilers draft story that could have gone horribly wrong. After a series of high-end draft picks in 2014, even though the Oilers didn't win the draft lottery, they lucked out with the 3rd overall pick, which they used to draft Leon Draisaitl, a big, strong two-way center who was lighting up the WHL with 105 points in his draft year. And Draisaitl would also have a great World Juniors and was an impact player during the World Championships as an 18-year-old. So in 2015, the Oilers felt that Draisaitl was mature enough to jump straight into the lineup. And this proved to be a gong show, as Draisaitl was placed in a bottom 6 role with limited responsibility, and he put up 9 points in 37 games. And to make matters worse, the Oilers didn't even allow him to play in the World Juniors on a team that was sitting at the bottom of the standings. And to add salt to the wounds, as soon as the World Juniors ended, Draisaitl will be sent down to the WHL. Just mind-boggling. And so after you're sent down, Draisaitl will go on to dominate the WHL with the Kelowna Rockets, and he'd make a much smoother transition the next year. And obviously hindsight is 2020, but it was very evident that Draisaitl should have had at least 1 more year of development. But instead, he was forced into a bottom 6 role. And living in Alberta and being a fan of the Oilers, this was very frustrating to watch. Because after 5 years of constant bottom 5 finishes, rushing prospects was just not the right thing to do. And you can say the same thing about Jesse Puljujarvi in 2016. However, fortunately for the Oilers, this would not hurt Draisaitl's development. And today, Draisaitl is a top 5, if not top 3 talent in the entire NHL, as he currently has 110 points with 11 games remaining, meaning he was on pace for an astounding 127 points. And so for a player in Draisaitl who was nearly another Oilers casualty, fortunately Draisaitl has developed into a superstar and is a potential Hall of Famer. Next, we have a pair of Swedish twins who came from one of the worst drafts in NHL history. In the summer of 1999, Brian Burke would pull all the stops because after a series of trades, Burke somehow managed to pull off the acquisition of pick number 2 and number 3, which of course he used to draft Henrik and Daniel Sedin. And this move was so ridiculous that many people thought he did this as a marketing ploy. But regardless, the Canucks now had 2 franchise players who were receiving a lot of criticism. And keep in mind, Daniel and Henrik Sedin were lighting up the SHL as teenagers, on top of dominating the World Juniors, but regardless, it was still seen as a joke. So finally, in the year 2000, when Daniel and Henrik entered the NHL, they were very underwhelming. Daniel had 34 points and Henrik had 29. And for the next 3 years, we saw little to no progression, as they both went from low 30-point scorers to high 30-point scorers. And so at this point, many fans outside of Vancouver were just laughing at the Canucks, as they drafted 2 high-end Swedes that would be no more than third-line scorers. However, during the lockout season in 2005, the Sedins would go back to Sweden, where they'd be playing with Marcus Naslund and Peter Forsberg, and when they returned, they would be entirely different players. In 2006, they both surpassed 70 points, and they would keep exponentially getting better until 2010, where Henrik Sedin would post an astounding 112 points, where he won the Art Ross Trophy, Hart Trophy, and was a first-team All-Star. In the next year, Daniel Sedin would have his own Art Ross season with 104 points. And so for 2 Swedes who were written off because they're average skaters who couldn't take a hit, they would go on to revolutionize the game of hockey with their insane passing plays and are future Hall of Famers. And lastly, we have the epic story of Jumbo Joe. Drafted first overall in 1997, Joe Thornton was a massive 6'4" playmaking center who looked like a potential cornerstone player, as he was a monster in his draft year with 122 points in 59 OHL games. And because of his gifted offense and physical stature, Joe Thornton would jump straight into the Bruins lineup. Except, well, Joe Thornton would have one of the worst rookie seasons by a first overall pick in NHL history, as Joe Thornton would put up 7 points in 55 games. 7. As Jumbo Joe was an 18-year-old first overall pick buried on the 4th line. However, slowly but surely, Jumbo Joe would progress extremely well. The next season he put up 41 points, 2 years later he put up 71, and Thornton would explode in development in 2002, where he put up 101 points as the captain of the Bruins. And then finally, in 2005, Joe Thornton would be involved in one of the worst trades in NHL history, as he was traded to the San Jose Sharks for Wayne Primo, Brad Stewart, and Marco Sturm. And don't get me wrong, not a terrible crop of players, but Thornton would go on to have his best season in his entire career, as Thornton put up an astounding 125 points in 81 games, where he'd take home the Art Ross Trophy and Hart Trophy. In fact, Joe Thornton is the only player in NHL history to get traded while winning the Hart Trophy in the same season. So to go from a first overall pick that put up 7 points in his rookie season to putting up 125 points is just miraculous. And today, Jumbo Joe is playing at the ripe old age of 40. He leads the entire NHL in active points and has been a top playmaker in the NHL for nearly 2 decades. And there's no doubt in my mind that Joe Thornton will end up in the Hall of Fame, which is pretty crazy to think after his horrendous rookie season. And Joe Thornton's rookie season is also why you can't judge someone like Jack Hughes, who has shown flashes of brilliance, but external factors are really influencing his production. Anyways guys, has your team ever drafted that high-end draft pick that took years to make an actual impact? Comment down below and press subscribe for some more awesome hockey content. I hope all you guys are doing well. Thank you guys so much for watching. See you guys later.